Let me ask you something simple. When was the last time you looked at your medicine cabinet and thought, which of these pills is actually helping me, and which might be quietly hurting me? Most people never ask that question. Why would they? Every box looks so reassuring. Smooth labels, trusted names, doctor approved. But here's the uncomfortable truth few people ever hear. Some of the very medications meant to protect your health could be slowly robbing you of your most precious gift, your memory. You see, by the time you finish listening to this segment, somewhere in the world, another 20 seniors will have been told they have dementia. 20 new diagnoses in just a few minutes. That's one every 66 seconds. Yet here's the twist. What if, for many, it's not their age or their genes to blame, but the small plastic bottles sitting on their bedside table? For decades, pharmaceutical companies have known that certain everyday drugs shrink the brain's memory centers. Some studies have shown reductions of more than 28% in less than a year. Imagine that. Nearly a third of your memory machinery gone, while you think you are just treating allergies or helping yourself sleep. And the cruelest part? 99% of seniors have no idea. They trust the system. They trust their doctors. And to be fair, most doctors never intend harm. They simply do not have time to explain that routine doesn't always mean safe. That's why, in this conversation, I want to guide you gently but 9 most common medications that can quietly trigger memory loss, confusion, and even dementia. I'll explain what they do inside your brain, why the danger is often invisible, and what safer options you can discuss with your doctor. This isn't about fear. It's about empowerment. Because once you understand what's happening, you can take control. So, let's begin with one of the most innocent-looking culprits of all. If you've ever had a bad cold, an itchy allergy, or a sleepless night, you've probably reached for that small pink tablet, Benadryl. Its scientific name is diphenhydramine. It's cheap, easy to find, and it works fast. So, what could possibly be wrong with that? Here's where things get unsettling. Inside your brain is a messenger called acetylcholine. Think of it as the courier that carries information from one neuron to another, helping you form memories, stay alert, and focus on what matters. Diphenhydramine blocks that courier. It's what we call an anticholinergic drug, meaning it literally cuts off acetylcholine's signal. Now, a young brain can sometimes bounce back. But the older we get, the more we depend on every drop of acetylcholine to stay sharp. When that signal is blocked repeatedly, night after night, month after month, the memory center, called the hippocampus, begins to shrink. A 2023 study published in the Journal of Geriatric Cognitive Health found that seniors using anticholinergic drugs regularly had a 54% higher risk of developing dementia compared to those who didn't. That's not a minor increase. That's a warning flare. Picture this. You're simply trying to sleep through the night, unaware that each PM or nighttime capsule is quietly dimming the lights inside your brain. The next morning you might feel a little foggier, maybe forget where you put your glasses. You shrug it off as aging, but it's the chemical effect of that pink pill. The good news? You have options. If you take something for allergies or sleep that lists diphenhydramine or PM on the label, ask your doctor about switching to non-sedating antihistamines like loratadine, often sold as Claritin, or cetirizine, Zyrtec. These don't cross the blood-brain barrier as easily and are far safer for long-term use. And here's a rule I share with my own patients. Never assume over-the-counter means harmless. Many of the most potent brain-altering substances don't need a prescription at all. So before you pop that next pink tablet, pause. Ask yourself, is this pill helping me sleep or slowly stealing my memories? Now let S move from the nightstand to the kitchen counter, where another silent threat hides behind promises of heartburn relief. I'm talking about proton pump inhibitors, or PPIs, medications like Prilosec, Nexium, and Prevacid. They're marketed as miracle fixes for acid reflux, GERD, or heartburn. And yes, they do what they promise. They block stomach acid. But here's what no one tells you. Your stomach acid isn't the villain. It's the gatekeeper. It's what helps your body absorb nutrients like vitamin B12, magnesium, and calcium, all essential for brain function. So when you shut off that acid for years, sometimes decades, you slowly starve your brain, literally. A massive study published in JAMA Neurology followed more than 73,000 adults aged 75 and older. The result? Regular PPI users had a 44% higher risk of developing dementia. Why? Because without enough stomach acid, vitamin B12 absorption plummets. And without B12, your brain's neurons can't fire properly. It's like trying to run a city when half the power grid is out. But that's not the only issue. Researchers have also found that long-term PPI use increases levels of amyloid beta plaques, the toxic proteins linked to Alzheimer's AS disease. Still, the fix isn't to quit cold turkey. If you've taken a PPI for years, your body will rebound with intense acid reflux if you stop suddenly. Instead, talk to your doctor about tapering gradually, or switching to gentler H2 blockers like Pepcid. They control acid without cutting it off completely. And for natural relief, consider a centuries-old remedy: deglycyrrhizated licorice. Chew a small piece before meals. It soothes and coats the stomach lining without harming your brain chemistry. I tell my patients all the time, if your brain feels foggy and you've been on acid blockers for years, don't ignore the connection. It might not be your memory failing. It might just be your stomach whispering for balance. Let S move on to something that affects millions of seniors but is rarely talked about out loud: bladder control. Few things are more frustrating than constantly running to the bathroom or worrying about leaks when you re-out. So when your doctor offers a pill like oxybutynin, brand name Ditropan, it can sound like a lifesaver. But there's a hidden cost. This drug works by calming the bladder muscles through, you guessed it, blocking acetylcholine, the same vital chemical we discussed earlier. Unfortunately, it doesn't just calm your bladder, it calms your brain. Unlike some medications that stay in the body's lower systems, oxybutynin easily crosses the blood-brain barrier and lands right in the hippocampus, the heart of your short-term memory. A 2019 study in the British Medical Journal followed adults over 65 who took strong bladder control drugs for more than a year. The result? A 49% higher risk of dementia. Nearly 1 in 2. Imagine that. A medication meant to restore your confidence could, over time, rob you of your clarity. Many seniors start noticing little things first. Forgetting why they walked into a room. Losing track of conversations. Feeling foggy. Most chalk it up to aging. Few realize the pill meant to prevent accidents is quietly slowing their thoughts. Now, does this mean you should just suffer in silence? Absolutely not. There are newer alternatives like mirabegron, Myrbetriq, which work through a different pathway and have shown minimal cognitive impact. They relax the bladder without touching acetylcholine. Also, lifestyle changes, like limiting caffeine after lunch, scheduling bathroom trips and pelvic floor exercises, can dramatically reduce symptoms. So if you're taking oxybutynin and something in your memory feels off, don't ignore that instinct. Bring it up. Say, "Doctor, I heard this drug might affect memory. Are there safer options for me?" That one conversation could protect years of your mental clarity. Now we arrive at a medication class that nearly every senior knows: statins. You've probably heard the line, "Take your statin, it'll save your heart." And for many, it does lower cholesterol and reduce heart attack risk. But the story is more complicated than those smiling pharmaceutical commercials ever reveal. Because here's what most people forget. Cholesterol isn't just a heart issue, it's a brain nutrient. Your brain is nearly 60% fat, and cholesterol is one of its main building blocks. It helps form the protective coating around nerve cells, the myelin sheath, that allows signals to travel fast and clear, like insulated wiring in your home. When we lower cholesterol too aggressively, we don't just quiet the arteries, we starve the neurons. A 2023 study in Frontiers in Aging Neuroscience followed seniors over 70 who'd been on statins for more than 3 years. Those long-term users showed a 26% higher risk of mild cognitive impairment. Some even described sudden memory lapses, forgetting familiar routes, blanking on names, feeling like a cloud had rolled in over their thoughts. Now, this doesn't mean statins are all evil. For people with serious cardiovascular disease, they can be life-saving. But not every statin behaves the same way. Drugs like pravastatin and rosuvastatin don't cross the blood-brain barrier easily and are far less likely to cause cognitive side effects. Others, like simvastatin or atorvastatin, do penetrate the brain more freely, and that's where problems arise. So, what can you do? First, don't stop suddenly. The heart and the brain are teammates. You need both. Instead, talk with your doctor about your specific risk profile. Sometimes lowering the dose or switching to a less penetrating statin is enough. In other cases, a combination of dietary changes, omega-3 fats, and moderate exercise can reduce cholesterol naturally, allowing you to rely less on heavy medication. I often remind my patients, the brain loves balance. Too much cholesterol is dangerous, but too little can make your mind feel like a car trying to run without oil. If you've been taking statins and you've noticed new forgetfulness or confusion, bring it up. It's not vanity, it's vigilance. Protecting your brain is just as important as protecting your heart. Let's talk about something deeply human: anxiety and sleep. Every senior I meet tells me a version of the same story. "Doctor, I just can't calm my mind anymore." Or, "I can fall asleep, but I wake up 3 hours later staring at the ceiling." So their doctor, or sometimes their neighbor, suggests a tiny pill to take the edge off. Valium, Xanax, Ativan. They work like magic at first. The world slows down, the muscles relax, and your thoughts finally stop racing. But over time, that magic turns into a quiet trap. These drugs are called benzodiazepines, or benzos for short. They boost a natural brain chemical called GABA, which tells your neurons to calm down. The problem is, when you artificially flood your brain with GABA signals for months or years, your brain starts depending on it, like leaning on a cane so long that your legs forget how to walk. A large 2022 study in the British Medical Journal followed over 8,000 seniors for 6 years. It found that those who used benzodiazepines for longer than 3 months had a 51% higher risk of Alzheimer's disease. That's not a coincidence, it's chemistry. When neurons are constantly sedated, they lose flexibility. Learning slows, memory storage weakens, emotional range narrows. Many of my older patients describe it perfectly. "Doctor, I feel like myself, but behind a foggy window." They're not sad, they're not sick, they're simply slowed down by chemistry. And when they try to quit, their brain panics. Anxiety surges back, sometimes worse than before. Sleep disappears. The body trembles. That is why so many people feel trapped, convinced they need the drug, when in fact the drug is the source of the problem. Here's the way out. Never stop suddenly. Work closely with your doctor to taper slowly. Reduce the dose little by little over weeks, sometimes months. During that time, gentle alternatives like buspirone, a non-sedating anti-anxiety medication, or cognitive behavioral therapy can retrain the brain to relax naturally. And one more simple tool: movement. A 10-minute walk, deep breathing, or stretching before bed can calm your nervous system faster than you'd imagine. It's not instant, but it's real. Remember, your goal isn't to numb the brain, it's to free it. Because clarity, not sedation, is the real sign of peace. Now let's visit an older medication that's still hiding in plain sight: amitriptyline, often sold as Elavil. If you've ever been prescribed something for nerve pain, migraines, or insomnia, there's a good chance you've crossed paths with it. Doctors like it because it's versatile. But versatility doesn't mean safety. Amitriptyline is one of the strongest anticholinergic drugs still on the market. That means it blocks the same brain messenger we keep coming back to: acetylcholine. When that chemical is silenced, memory pathways begin to fade like roads covered in fog. A landmark 2015 study in JAMA Internal Medicine followed over 3,400 adults aged 65 and older for 10 years. The result? Those who took high cumulative doses of strong anticholinergic drugs like amitriptyline had a 54% greater chance of developing dementia. What breaks my heart is that many of these people were never warned. They were told, "This will help you sleep," or "It's good for nerve pain." No one mentioned it could slowly dull their mental sharpness. Picture it. You start forgetting names. You lose track of conversations. You struggle to find the right word mid-sentence. You tell yourself, "I guess I'm just getting old." But it's not age, it's chemistry again. The solution is not despair, it's dialogue. Talk with your doctor about switching to newer options. For nerve pain, duloxetine or gabapentin can help without draining acetylcholine. For sleep, low-dose doxepin or melatonin may offer relief. And for mood, modern antidepressants like sertraline or escitalopram are far gentler on the brain. The key is personalization. There's no one-size-fits-all pill, but there is always a safer way, if you know to ask for it. You might think that with all the medical progress we've made, newer antidepressants would automatically be safer. And in most cases, that's true. But there's one sneaky exception that proves otherwise. Paroxetine, better known by its brand name Paxil. It's technically an SSRI, a selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor. These drugs were designed to replace older, harsher antidepressants. But paroxetine has a dark secret. It still blocks acetylcholine. That single detail makes it behave more like an old-school drug dressed in modern packaging. A 2021 review in Frontiers in Psychiatry looked at elderly patients on various SSRIs and found something alarming. Those taking paroxetine showed clear declines in short-term memory, verbal recall, and focus, often within the first year. In fact, they were 30% more likely to develop mild cognitive impairment than those on safer SSRIs like sertraline or escitalopram. Think about the irony. A medication meant to brighten your mood ends up dimming your mental clarity. You feel calmer, yes, but also slower, less focused, emotionally flat. So what's the takeaway? If you or a loved one are taking Paxil, it's worth asking a gentle but firm question. Doctor, would sertraline or escitalopram be safer for me? Those two have excellent safety records in seniors and don't interfere with memory. And here's a bonus tip. If you're struggling with mood changes or low energy, remember that B vitamins, especially B12 and B6, play a huge role in how your brain produces serotonin naturally. Sometimes the issue isn't a lack of antidepressants, it's a lack of nutrients. Your brain doesn't need chemical silence, it needs gentle balance. The kind that lets you laugh, remember, and feel again, all at once. Now, this one hurts to talk about. Because I've seen it with my own eyes. Good, vibrant people who become unrecognizable after a single prescription change. I'm talking about antipsychotics like Seroquel, quetiapine, risperidone, and Zyprexa, olanzapine. Originally, these were meant for serious psychiatric conditions, schizophrenia, bipolar disorder. But over the years, they've been quietly repurposed for things like agitation, sleep problems, or restlessness in seniors. Here's the tragic part. These drugs suppress dopamine, the brain chemical responsible for motivation, joy, and alertness. When dopamine levels crash, so does personality. Patients begin to look empty-eyed, slow, emotionally flat, like a light has gone out behind the eyes. Families often say, "She's still here, but not really." And yet, these drugs are given out in nursing homes every day, often without full informed consent. A 2022 study in The Lancet Healthy Longevity followed over 25,000 seniors. Those prescribed antipsychotics for behavioral issues were 71% more likely to suffer accelerated cognitive decline within a year. 71%. And for what? Often just to make a restless or confused patient easier to manage. I understand. Dementia and agitation can be heartbreaking for families. But there are safer ways to help. Structured daily routines, soft lighting in the evenings, calming music, ensuring pain or discomfort is addressed. Even something as simple as a familiar photograph can soothe anxiety better than a chemical sedative. When medication is truly needed, lower doses for shorter periods can make a world of difference. But you deserve to know the risks. Because no one should lose their spark just to gain a few hours of quiet. If you've seen a loved one suddenly change, dull eyes, heavy limbs, lost laughter, ask their doctor if an antipsychotic could be involved. Sometimes, reducing or switching medications can bring that light back within weeks. There's something I wish every senior knew. It's not your age that's slowly taking your memory. It's not even your genes. Sometimes, it's the quiet pile of pills you take each morning. The ones you never question, because you were told they're routine. You know that little sound when you open your pill organizer, that soft clink of tablets. For millions of seniors, that sound is the soundtrack of trust. Trust in the system, in the prescriptions, in the hope that every pill is protecting them. But hidden inside that trust is a quiet danger, a chemical chorus playing the wrong tune. Doctors call it polypharmacy, which simply means many drugs. But the version we're talking about here is even more specific: anticholinergic polypharmacy. That's when several of your medications share the same harmful effect. They block acetylcholine, the brain's primary messenger for learning, focus, and memory. And here's the frightening truth. Even if each pill blocks only a little, when you combine them, the effects add up, silently, invisibly, day after day. Think of acetylcholine as the electricity that powers your home. Maybe one appliance flickers. That's manageable. But what happens when half your circuits are cut off? The lights dim, the refrigerator hums weakly, and before you know it, the whole system struggles to stay on. That's exactly what happens to your brain when too many medications block this vital signal. A 2022 study published in Age and Aging followed more than 280,000 older adults over a decade. The results were shocking. Those with the highest anticholinergic load, meaning the total blocking effect from multiple drugs, had a 120% higher risk of developing dementia. That's not a small increase. That's double the risk. But what makes this so dangerous is how invisible it is. Most seniors taking these medications don't even realize they fall into this category. They're not taking anything strong, or so they think. It's just a sleeping pill here, an allergy tablet there, something for the bladder, something for the nerves, something for pain. Each but together, they form a chemical fog. I once had a patient, let's call her Margaret, a retired teacher in her 70s. Sharp, witty, full of life. Over time, she started losing small pieces of herself. Names, recipes, birthdays. Her husband said she'd repeat stories twice in the same conversation. She was terrified it was early Alzheimer's. When we reviewed her medications, I counted 7 with anticholinergic effects. 1 for sleep, 1 for allergies, 1 for bladder control, 2 for pain, 1 for mood, and another over-the-counter cold medicine. Each on its own, mild, combined, a perfect storm. We began carefully tapering, slowly replacing the culprits with safer alternatives. Within 3 months, her fog began to lift. She'd call me excited, saying, "Doctor, I finished the crossword again." 6 months later, she was reading novels, laughing at jokes, remembering details she thought she'd lost forever. That's the miracle the pharmaceutical ads never show you. The miracle of taking less. Because when you remove the chemical noise, your natural mind, that vibrant, sharp, curious mind, begins to sing again. Why this happens, and why it's so often missed. The reason this danger slips under the radar is simple. Every specialist focuses on their own piece of the puzzle. The cardiologist prescribes something for your heart. The neurologist adds something for your nerves. The urologist gives you something for the bladder. And the family doctor renews it all, assuming the rest makes sense. No one steps back to look at the full picture. The total chemical load on your brain. And you trust them, as you should, because they mean well. But good intentions don't cancel out bad chemistry. Over time, you start to notice little changes. You walk into a room and forget why. You lose your train of thought mid-sentence. You find yourself more tired, more detached. Maybe you blame yourself. You say, "Well, I'm getting older." But aging doesn't happen overnight. Drug-induced cognitive decline does, and it's reversible if caught early enough. The signs to watch for. If you've been on multiple medications and you've noticed any of the following, it's worth a conversation with your doctor. Increased forgetfulness or trouble concentrating, unusual fatigue or daytime drowsiness, confusion in familiar places, feeling emotionally flat or detached, losing interest in things that once excited you. These are not just signs of age. They are your brain's way of saying, "I'm overloaded." The science of reversal. Now, here's the most hopeful part of all this. Drug-induced dementia is often reversible. Yes, you heard that right. The brain has an extraordinary ability to heal when the pressure is lifted. In clinical studies, seniors who reduced their anticholinergic burden showed measurable improvements in attention, processing speed, and memory within months. Think of your neurons like plants wilting under too much shade. Once you remove the blockage, light returns, and growth begins again. I've seen patients in their 80s experience this comeback. Within weeks of carefully adjusting their medications, they started to smile more, participate in conversations, recognize faces they'd begun to forget. One woman told me, "It feels like someone opened the curtains in my head. How to start the process. The most powerful step you can take is to schedule what's called a comprehensive medication review. Bring every pill you take, prescriptions, over-the-counter tablets, supplements, to your doctor or pharmacist. Don't just list them, bring the actual bottles. Then, ask a simple but specific question. Can we check which of these drugs have anticholinergic effects? Pharmacists now have access to tools that calculate your anticholinergic load, a score that shows how much total brain blocking your medication mix creates. Once you see that score, you can start reducing it strategically. Maybe it's replacing Benadryl with Claritin, or switching from oxybutynin to mirabegron for bladder control, or changing an old antidepressant like amitriptyline to something newer like sertraline. Each change is like removing another layer of fog from a window. Slowly, you start to see clearly again. The fear that holds people back. Some seniors hesitate. They say, "Doctor, I'm scared to change my medications. What if my symptoms come back?" That's a valid fear, and it's why no one should ever make changes abruptly or alone. But here's the truth. The goal isn't to stop everything. It's to find balance, to keep what your body truly needs, and gently remove what your brain doesn't. And you're not doing it in the dark. You're doing it guided by data, by research, and by compassion. Imagine being able to read again without losing focus, remembering your grandchildren's names instantly, feeling awake, alive, and connected. That's not a fantasy. That's what happens when your brain finally gets to breathe. The deeper meaning. What this really represents. At its core, this isn't just about chemistry. It's about dignity, about keeping the part of yourself that remembers who you are. Every memory, every habit, every inside joke with a loved one. It all lives in that delicate network of neurons. And for too many people, that network is being dimmed, not by age, but by the weight of well-intentioned medicine. That's why I believe the single most powerful prescription for seniors today isn't another pill. It's awareness. Awareness that you can question, review, and change. That your story isn't written in tablets. What happens when the burden lifts? When someone finally lightens their medication load, you can feel the difference. Not just in tests, but in spirit. Their eyes get brighter. Their posture changes. They laugh again. The house feels more alive. Family members often say, "It's like having them back." And maybe that's the real miracle of modern medicine. Not in adding more chemicals, but in learning when to step back. If you or someone you love takes more than 5 medications, make this your next act of self-care. Not another supplement, not another diet, just a simple, honest medication review. It costs nothing, but it could give you back years of clarity. And if your doctor seems rushed or dismissive, insist gently. You have every right to ask, "Can we talk about my total medication burden?" Sometimes that one question can change everything. Because beneath the surface of every foggy mind might be a perfectly healthy brain just waiting to shine again. A personal reflection. I still remember a gentleman named Henry, 83 years old, once a mechanic, sharp as a tack until about a year before we met. His daughter brought him in, worried he was slipping. He'd forget appointments, get lost on familiar roads, repeat the same story 3 times. We reviewed his medications together, 7 in total. 4 had strong anticholinergic effects. We began the slow process of replacing them, not stopping, just adjusting. Within 6 months, Henry was back to fixing clocks in his garage, something he hadn't done in years. He said to me one day, with tears in his eyes, "Doctor, I thought I was gone. Turns out I was just buried under pills." That moment stays with me, because it's a reminder that so much of what we call aging isn't inevitable. Sometimes it's just reversible chemistry. The takeaway, and a promise. So, if there's one thing you take away from this video, let it be this. Never accept mental decline as your destiny without first checking your medicine cabinet. The human brain is one of the most resilient organs in the body. It rebuilds connections, rewires pathways, and recovers from years of imbalance, if given the chance. Start by asking one question. Bring your list of medications to your next appointment and say, "Doctor, I'd like to review these to protect my memory." You'll be amazed how quickly that conversation turns empowering. Because the truth is, doctors want to help. Sometimes they just need you to start the dialogue. And if you feel like this message could help someone else, a parent, a neighbor, a friend, share it. Don't keep it quiet. The number of seniors suffering from drug-induced brain fog is growing every year, but so is the number of those waking up, taking charge, and getting their clarity back. You have more control over your mind than you've been led to believe. You don't need more pills, you need more awareness. And the next time you open that little pill box in the morning, I hope you'll look at it differently. Not as a symbol of dependence, but as a reminder of choice. Because every single one of those pills deserves to earn its place in your life. Ask questions, seek balance, protect your spark. Because the most powerful medicine of all is not what you swallow, it's what you understand.